Hello and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 25th April 2026, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be looking into the 7 set of current affairs issues which are featured in today's newspaper. The handout of this very discussion has been pinned in the comment section below for a future reference. Beginning with the analysis section, in the first topic, we'll try and understand that why there's a need to diversify our energy sources and what all steps the government has taken in this particular respect and what more needs to be done in order to realize the idea of energy security in India. Moving on to the second topic, herein we'll try and understand India-Maldives relation. We'll be looking into the areas of cooperation between the two countries and the recent emerging challenges between the two nations. And we'll also try and understand that how India can improve its bilateral as well as strategic relations with Maldives. Moving on to the prelim pointer segment, herein we'll be covering 5 set of topics which are more relevant for the prelims. So we'll be doing the value addition which will be relevant for your upcoming prelims examination. So stay tuned. Now, beginning with the first topic, which is dealing with the idea of energy security and why there's a need for India to move in the direction of energy diversification. This particular topic you can associate with GS paper 3, infrastructure and energy. Now, we all know that due to the closure of Strait of Hormuz, what has happened? We are witnessing supply chain disruptions when it comes to crude oil and when it comes to LPG. And due to this, what has happened? The price of LPG cylinders have skyrocketed and that has ultimately led to labor unrest at various places when it comes to India. So keeping all these things in mind, an editorial has appeared in Indian Express wherein the writer tells us that what are the ways India can adopt when it comes to ensuring this idea of energy security. So first of all, let's just understand what do we mean by energy security. So in simple terms, it tells us that there should be adequate availability of the energy resources and these energy resources should be available to the common people at an affordable rate. This simply tells us that there should be a reliable supply of the energy resources and it should not be subjected to supply chain disruptions. And why India need to focus upon this particular idea? Because even today, we have a huge dependence upon the crude oil imports. Now, let's explore this particular thing that why India needs to move in this direction of energy security. First and foremost is to ensure the macroeconomic stability in India. You must have followed the newspapers and you must have come across this particular development that earlier India was the 4th largest economy when it comes to the nominal GDP at the global level. But because of this West Asian conflict, what has happened? India is currently the 6th largest global economy. What is the connection? What has happened is because of the increase in the price of the crude oil that we are getting, this has increased the import bill. And this has ultimately widened the CAD, current account deficit. And whenever the current account deficit increases, what happens? Your rupee would depreciate. So, rupee has depreciated in comparison to dollar. And when we look into this particular fact that which is the largest country in the nominal GDP terms, we do it in terms of dollar. So, as rupee has depreciated, this is one of the reasons why India has become the 6th largest economy globally instead of being the 4th largest. So, to ensure macroeconomic stability, we need to put in place adequate energy resources in place. Another factor is to ensure strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy simply tells us that India should have the freedom to decide its own domestic as well as the international affairs. But when it comes to India, you must have come across this perplexing situation that India's macroeconomic stability is very much dependent upon the decisions which the Trump takes. Trump would be telling India that whether you can import discounted crude oil from Russia or from Iran, or you are allowed to import crude oil from Venezuela or not. And the decisions taken by Trump are going to have implications when it comes to India's macroeconomic stability. Earlier, Trump said that you are not allowed to import discounted crude oil from Russia, and that has ultimately widened the CAD, and this again has resulted in the depreciation of Indian rupee. So, to ensure strategic autonomy also, to get this freedom to decide our own affairs, we need to put in place adequate energy resources. Then for technological advancement also, currently we are talking about the AI landscape. How do you think the data centers are going to be powered? You need adequate and reliable supply of electricity. And if there will be huge fluctuation in the electricity prices, don't you think so our competitiveness when it comes to the AI landscape would get impacted? So this is another reason why we need to move in this direction of energy security. Then, in order to realize the idea of sustainable as well as inclusive growth also, we need to put in place adequate green energy resources also. Okay, for example, under the Ujjwala scheme, what we are providing? We are providing LPG cylinder, which is considered to be as a clean fuel as compared to using the wood for cooking the food. Okay, and this would go a long way in reducing the indoor pollution, and which earlier used to negatively impact the women health also. So in order to realize the sustainable development goal number 7, that is affordable and clean energy to all, we need to move in this direction of energy security. And lastly, we need to balance the economic growth with economic sustainability. We all know that with rising urbanization, with rising industrialization, the energy demand is going to increase over a period of time. So to meet this energy demand, and in order to ensure that our industrial growth does not get impacted, we need to put in place adequate energy resources. And in this respect, we also need to make a transition towards the renewable energy. This would enable us to realize the idea of net zero carbon emission as well. Now, having understood the need, what are the challenges which India is facing currently? First and foremost is our huge import dependency. We all know that when it comes to India, we are importing more than 80% of crude oil from other countries, and more than 50% of our gas requirement is filled through imports. That is leading to fluctuations in the value of rupee, and this is also inflating our trade deficit and ultimately leading to macroeconomic instability, which is currently the situation we are facing. Then we have inadequate strategic storage buffers also. When it comes to India's strategic petroleum reserves, we currently have the petroleum reserve which can provide us a net import cover of merely 9.5 days. Whereas when you go by the benchmark suggested by the International Energy Agency, it suggests that we need to have a buffer of 90 days. But we still have inadequate storage buffers when it comes to the petroleum reserves. Then we have the problem when it comes to mineral exploration. Although various surveys points out that we have lithium reserves in the Jammu and Kashmir, but we have still not carried out extraction of these lithium reserves at a commercial scale. Why do you think we need to extract the lithium reserve? So that we can reduce our dependence upon China for lithium exports, and we can make an advancement in the EV sector, and this would again help us reduce our dependence when it comes to the crude oil. Then when it comes to renewable energy, the problem is there is grid intermittency. When it comes to the solar energy, it can be generated only during the daytime and not during the night time. When it comes to wind energy, it is dependent upon whether the wind is blowing or not. So you don't have 24/7 production when it comes to the renewable energy. So in order to store whatever energy is getting produced, we need to put in place storage infrastructure. But currently we have huge deficits when it comes to the storage infrastructure. We have been able to put in place storage infrastructure for merely 547 megawatt hours. Then when you talk about the renewable energy, there is a green on green land acquisition conflict. Whether we promote the production of renewable energy, for example solar and wind parks, but for this you need a larger piece of land. The another conflict that we are facing is this is going to reduce the land availability for the agriculture production. Okay, so these are some of the challenges that we are facing when it comes to ensuring India's energy security. Now, what all steps India has taken in this particular respect? First and foremost, we have understood that we need to diversify our energy sources. And that is the reason in the recent time, India has signed a deal to buy liquefied natural gas from UAE. Then we have made advancement when it comes to strategic petroleum reserves. We have put in place strategic petroleum reserves in these 3 locations, that is Visakhapatnam, Mangaluru and Padur. And we have also decided that we'll be expanding the petroleum reserves. We'll be coming up with additional storage facility when it comes to Padur and Chandikol in Odisha. But even today, when it comes to the storage reserve, it is still inadequate. We need to make further advancement in this respect. Then when it comes to the clean and renewable energy, here we have done great. India is currently ranked third when it comes to renewable energy installed capacity. We need to continue this advancement so that we can reduce our dependence upon the crude oil. Then when it comes to renewable energy, we have come up with the PM Kusum scheme. When it comes to green hydrogen mission, here we plan that we need to produce 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen annually by 2030. And when it comes to green hydrogen, this is done through electrolysis of water, wherein the byproducts are hydrogen and oxygen by using the renewable energy, that is solar energy or wind energy. Then we are also focusing upon bioenergy. We have Satat mission, wherein we are promoting the production of biogas. We are focusing upon waste to energy plants to diversify our energy sources. Now, having understood what all steps we have taken, what more needs to be done so that we can effectively realize this idea of energy security? First and foremost, we need to further diversify the energy sources. Okay, like what we have signed the deal with UAE, like this, we need to ensure that India follow its strategic autonomy, and our macroeconomic stability should not be left at this particular thing that what Trump's decide the very next day when he wakes up. Okay, so in order to ensure that there is macroeconomic stability when it comes to India, we need to diversify our energy sources, and we need to enter into long-term contracts, especially with reliable partners. Then we need to invest in storage solutions. If we want to realize the full potential of renewable energy, we need to enhance the storage facility so that we can address the problem of grid intermittency. Then we need to adopt energy efficient technologies. It is not just enough that you widen the energy sources. You also need to adopt energy efficient technologies. Like for example, smart grids. You can analyze the pattern of a user, okay, and based on that we can provide the necessary heating and the cooling to that particular person. So you need to study the consumer pattern also in this respect. We need to advance in the direction of electric vehicles also. So all these steps would enable us to reduce our energy requirement also. Then we need to invest in alternative fuels, for example, biomethane, biofuels. For this, we can use the crop residue, okay, which is going as a waste. So we can effectively utilize the agriculture waste to come up with biomethane and biofuels. And lastly, we need to strengthen the nuclear energy. Currently, we made great advancement when it comes to the second stage of India 3-stage nuclear program. We have attained the criticality stage when it comes to the fast breeder reactor, which has been put in place in the Tamil Nadu, Kalpakkam. So like this, we need to make great advancement when it comes to the nuclear energy. That's all that we need to know when it comes to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we have, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, beginning with the second topic, which is dealing with India-Maldives relationship, you can associate this particular topic with GS paper 2, India and its neighborhood relation. Why we are discussing India-Maldives relation? Because recently, India has released 30 billion rupees under the SAARC currency swap framework. Now, first thing that we need to understand is, what is this currency swap agreement? Under this agreement, the central bank of two countries enter into this agreement that they will be exchanging the currencies at a predetermined exchange rate. This exchange rate would not be dependent upon the market, determined exchange rate. That exchange rate would be determined by the central banks of the two countries. Now, under leg 1, the central banks of the two countries would be exchanging the currencies. For example, currently India has provided rupees to Maldives, and in return Maldives can provide its own currency, okay, domestic currency. Now Maldives can use this rupee to pay the import bill, okay, whatever imports it is making from India, it can use rupee to repay this. And in return, what India would be getting? India would be getting interest payments from Maldives Central Bank. And in the leg 2, at a predetermined rate and at a predetermined exchange rate, again the two central banks would be exchanging the currencies. What is the benefit of currency swap agreement? It helps the country to meet the short-term liquidity requirements, especially to deal with the BOP deficit. And the country do not need to maintain the foreign currency assets, okay, in a huge number. So that is the benefit. And when it comes to India, in this case, India would be getting the interest payment. So that is additional benefit for India. Now, let's try and look into that how the India-Maldives relations has evolved over a period of time. So earlier, we used to have good relation with Maldives. In 1965, when Maldives got independence, India was the first country which established diplomatic relations with Maldives. And we set up the Indian mission in Malé in 1972. Then we enabled the President Maum Abdul Gayoom to overthrow a coup attempt, okay, which was planned by Maldives businessmen and Sri Lankan Tamil fighters. So this further strengthened India-Maldives relation. Then again under the time period of Muhammad Nasheed, we established better security cooperation with Maldives. So during this time, India provided helicopters, Dornier aircraft and patrol boats, okay, which enable to do effective maritime surveillance. We witnessed strain in relationship when Abdullah Yamin came into power because he was more tilted towards China. He also signed FTA with China. He collaborated with Chinese companies and gave infrastructure projects to Chinese companies like building the Friendship Bridge, and that led to deterioration of the relation between India and Maldives. And India also raised objections when it comes to Abdullah Yamin imposing emergency in Maldives. So all these actually strained the relation between India and Maldives. The relation again came back on track when Ibrahim Mohammed Solih came into power. Again, Maldives adopted India First policy. It gave infrastructure projects to India. For example, the two countries signed MOU with respect to development of Greater Malé connectivity projects. But during this time, we have witnessed a rise in India Out campaign. What is this India Out campaign? It is a political movement to mobilize people in Maldives, and this is something that we saw during the Abdullah Yamin time also. He is a major supporter of this India Out campaign. So Maldives people are especially against the presence of Indian military on the Maldivian soil. Okay, so this is a problem that has re-emerged again. Okay, let's try and understand that what are the significance. Why Maldives is important for India? First and foremost, because of the geostrategic reason. When it comes to Maldives, it is located quite close to the important sea lanes of communication from where 50% of India's external trade and 80% of energy imports of India pass through this particular area. When it comes to Maldives, it is important for India to counter the Chinese presence because China is trying to build up infrastructure projects which it would be using for dual use purpose. It might be using it for civilian purpose as well as for military purpose. So we want to counter the Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. For that, we need collaboration with Maldives. Then, in order to secure India's security interest also, we need to collaborate with Maldives because Maldives can emerge as a key partner when it comes to ensuring regional maritime stability. From security point of view also, it is important because we can collaborate on different dimensions, for example, dealing with terrorism, piracy, drug trafficking, narcotics and other maritime crimes also. And huge Indian diaspora is working in Maldives. So that is another significance of Maldives. Indian diaspora is working in sectors like education, medical care, hospitality sectors. Now, let's look into the areas of cooperation between the two countries. First and the foremost is the economic cooperation. Recently, India has emerged Maldives' largest trading partner, and the bilateral trade between the two countries have crossed $500 million mark in 2023. And a lot of Indians go as tourists to Maldives. So, Indian are a major supply of, or we can say that we are majorly contributing to the tourism sector of Maldives. And tourism is the backbone of the Maldivian economy. Then the two countries are collaborating in the infrastructure domain also. We discussed that India has, signed an agreement when it comes to developing the Greater Malé connectivity project, and India is also going to develop the airport, okay, at Hanimadu International Airport. Then the two countries are also collaborating when it comes to the defense and the security domain. The two countries carry out joint exercises like Ikuvirin, Ekatha, and they have signed a comprehensive action plan for defense in April 2016 to basically consolidate India-Maldives defense partnership. Then when you talk about the humanitarian assistance, India has always provided humanitarian assistance to Maldives. You talk about COVID-19 pandemic, we provided Covishield vaccines, we provided essential medicines under the Operation Sanjeevani. We also addressed the water shortage under the Operation Neer in 2014. So India has always provided humanitarian assistance to Maldives. Then the two countries are also collaborating when it comes to improving the maritime security. The two countries reviewed their progress when it comes to economic and maritime security partnership, and India recently affirmed that it would be going with the neighborhood first policy, and we reaffirmed the Mahasagar policy, that is mutual and holistic growth and security for all in the region, especially when it comes to the Indian Ocean region. The two countries are also collaborating when it comes to enhancing the digital connectivity. So we are exploring the idea of launching UPI in Maldives. Now, having understood the areas of cooperation, let's just look into the challenges in India-Maldives relation. First and foremost is the re-emergence of India Out campaign. When it comes to the present president of Maldives, that is Mizu, he is also a supporter of this India Out campaign. On what basis we are saying this? Maldives government has refused to renew the MOU which it had with India, under which we used to carry out joint hydrographic survey. This MOU was supposed to expire in 2023, but the Maldivian government said that we are not going to review it. So this India Out campaign has again come into picture, and it is again straining India-Maldives relation. Then the China factor is a pertinent factor. India has raised concern in this respect because Maldives has joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, and China is developing various infrastructure projects, which India is of the view that China might be using this infrastructure projects for military purpose also in the future day. Then currently Maldivian economy is witnessing a lot of instability, as pointed out by the World Bank also. Why economic instability is a problem? Because when a country is witnessing economic instability, it creates a fertile ground for radicalization. Okay, and this is something that we are seeing on the Maldivian soil as well. Various Maldivian citizens have joined extremist organizations like the Islamic State. So it has raised concern that in future Maldivian soil might be used for carrying out terrorist attack when it comes to India. Then going forward, what all steps we need to take in order to improve our ties with the Maldives? First and foremost, we need to carry out constructive engagement with the new regime. We need to fast track whatever infrastructure projects we are building, and we need to set this message very clear that whatever infrastructure projects we are building, we are not going to use it for military purpose. Rather, these infrastructure projects are going to give a boost to the tourism sector, which is the backbone when it comes to Maldivian economy. Then we need to increase the developmental assistance. We need to target such projects which have a larger impact on the general population of Maldives. Basically, we need to provide skill development, we need to provide entrepreneurship skills to the common people when it comes to the Maldives, so that we can effectively address this India Out campaign sentiment which is on a rise when it comes to Maldives. We need to ensure timely completion of the infrastructure projects. Only then India could emerge as a better alternative as compared to the China's Belt and Road Initiative. We need to target the youth. Okay, we need to provide skill to the Maldivian youth so that we can ensure that the Maldivian soil is not used for carrying out terrorist activities when it comes to India. And we need to further collaborate when it comes to enhancing maritime and security partnership. So we need to support the patrol vessels, drone, intelligence sharing should be there so that we can effectively address, the challenges which are emerging like piracy and all, which are emerging in the maritime domain as well. And we can ensure that regional stability and security is ensured. That's all that we need to look into when it comes to this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So based on the discussion that we have, please try and attempt this particular question. With this, let's move on to the prelim pointer segment. Now, beginning with the prelim pointer segment, the first article is dealing with the Goldilock period. This particular topic you can associate with the economy section of your prelim syllabus. Now, when we presented the budget this year, we announced that Indian economy is witnessing a rare Goldilock period. What is this Goldilock period? Wherein you have sustained growth, you have low inflation rate, and you also have low unemployment levels as well. But since we made this announcement, after that, we are witnessing a series of negative news, which tells us that Indian economy is no more witnessing this Goldilock period. Why is it so? First and the foremost reason is, when we changed the base year for our GDP estimation, we changed it from 2011-12 to 2022-23, we got to know that we were overestimating our GDP. Then came the US-Iran war. Because of that, we are witnessing the supply shock when it comes to the crude oil, and that has led to increase in current account deficit, and which has ultimately led to depreciation of the Indian rupee. And these two developments has led to another negative news, that Indian economy is now considered to be as the 6th largest economy globally. Earlier, we were the 4th largest economy. Okay. So Japan and UK overtook India in GDP terms. And experts are pointing out that if this hostility continues when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, we are going to witness a slower growth, and at the same time, we will be witnessing higher inflation levels as well. What is the situation actually called in economics? Let me know in the comment section, everyone. Now, when it comes to the IMF's World Economic Outlook, it pointed out that Indian economy is now the 6th largest economy. So we have US, China, Germany, Japan, UK, and India is now the 6th largest economy. Why it has happened? I told you, it is one reason is the change in the base year of the GDP. Another reason is the depreciation of the Indian rupee. Because when you look at the nominal GDP at the global level, we do it in dollar terms. Now, since the rupee has breached the 90 rupee mark also when it comes to $1, and since when we calculate the nominal GDP at the global level, you do it in the dollar terms. So what has happened is, the dollar denominated size of the Indian economy has actually gone down. So this is the reason Indian economy is now the 6th largest economy globally. Now, the writer further points out that there is another series of negative news. Why? Because when you look at the compounded annual growth rate of nominal GDP as well as real GDP, therein also the growth rate is falling down. And that is the reason it is a high time that we introduce structural reforms. We focus upon our manufacturing segment, we focus upon food processing industries, and we try to give adequate support to the export sectors so that we can enhance the export competitiveness. And we need to take adequate steps to prevent rupee from depreciating further. Now, in this article, one term was mentioned, that is the base effect. So earlier we were getting a higher figure of the GDP. Why? Because we were using 2011 and 2012 as the base year. Now, how base effect leads to different GDP figures, let's understand this. I have explained this in terms of inflation. I'll be telling you that how do you calculate in terms of GDP also. So how do you calculate inflation rate? We take into account the prices of this particular month in 2026, and you will be comparing it with the prices in the same month in the last year. Okay, so we will take into account the prices that were prevailing in the April 2025, and in the denominator you will have the prices that were prevailing in April 2025. Okay, this is the formula. So in one scenario we have a lower base. We have taken that the prices were 150, and when it comes to April 2026, in both the scenarios we have considered same price, that is 300 rupees. But in this case, as you see, the base is lower, you will be getting a higher inflation rate, that is 100%. But in this case, since the base is high, the denominator is high, that is why you will be getting a lower inflation rate. The same things happen when it comes to the GDP. If in the base I am taking into account a year wherein I had recession, okay, so since the base is low, what would happen? When you compare it with this year GDP, nominal GDP, you will be getting a higher GDP figure, okay, you will be getting a higher GDP growth rate. So when it comes to GDP, how do you do the comparison? We do it in quarter terms. So I'll be comparing this quarter with the same quarter in the last year. So when the base is low, you will be getting a higher growth rate, but when the base is high, then you will be getting a lower growth rate. That is what is base effect. So the base year value is very important when you are looking at the growth rate. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently, because of various flaws when it comes to the payment banks of Paytm, RBI has recently cancelled the banking license of Paytm. This particular topic again you can associate with the economy section of your prelims syllabus. Now when it comes to RBI, it has cancelled the banking license which it has earlier issued to the Paytm Payments Bank under section 22 of the Banking Regulation Act of 1949, and subsequently what would happen, the Paytm Payments Bank would not be able to carry out banking related activities. Now why all these things happen, let's try and understand. RBI found out that there is huge violation when it comes to carrying out the KYC norms, know your customer norms, which are designed to prevent financial frauds. But when it comes to Paytm, it was not effectively carrying out the KYC norms. What it has done, it has linked various bank accounts with a single PAN number. This could be used to bypass the regulatory safeguard, and this could be obviously be used for money laundering purpose. And it allowed transaction beyond a prescribed limit for certain accounts. This was again problematic. Then in June 2018, when RBI carried out the audit of this Paytm Payments Bank, it found out various flaws when it comes to the functioning of this bank. What it found out, that the new customers were not adequately verified. Okay, so the KYC procedure were not followed effectively, and as a result, the RBI has given this particular directive to the Paytm payment banks, okay, when it comes to June 2018, that you need to stop onboarding new customers until and unless you follow all the guidelines that we have given to you. You address all the identified deficiency, that is carrying out the KYC norms and effective linking of the accounts with the PAN numbers. Now, what is important from our prelims perspective is what are these payment banks? So, when it comes to this payment banks, this idea was given by Nachiket Moore committee to come up with a specialized bank so that we can look into or we can address the specific financial needs of the people who are earning very less, or to address the financial needs of the people living in the rural areas. Okay. Now, who can promote a payment bank? So it can be your NBFC, it could be corporations, it could be public sector entities, supermarket chains, mobile phone companies, etc. So you have Airtel payment banks, Jio payment banks, etc. How they are registered? So they are registered as a public limited company under the Companies Act of 2013. And how they are regulated? RBI regulates them under the Banking Regulation Act of 1949. And when RBI recently cancelled the banking license, so it was done under this particular act only. Now, what all activities the payments bank are not allowed to do? So they are not allowed to give credit, and since they are not allowed to give credit, they are not allowed to issue credit cards, because credit cards are like a loan. So since payment bank cannot give loans, so they are not allowed to issue credit cards as well. And they are not allowed to accept NRI deposits as well as fixed deposit. So what they are actually allowed to do? So they are only allowed to accept demand deposits, and that too up to a limit of 2 lakh per customer. They can offer remittances services, they can enable mobile payments, transfer, purchases, etc. And they are allowed to issue debit cards? The answer is yes, because they can accept demand deposits. Any bank which is allowed to accept demand deposits, they are allowed to issue debit cards or ATM cards. And when it comes to this loan thing, as the payment bank is not allowed to issue loans, so they are not allowed to issue credit cards. Is deposit insurance available? The answer is yes. And the PSL targets, are they applicable on payments bank? The answer is no. Why? Because the payment banks, as we discussed, they are not allowed to give loans. So no PSL targets is imposed on them. When it comes to the CRR, yes, it is applicable when it comes to the payments bank. And they have to ensure that 75% of the demand deposits that they are getting, they have to invest it in the SLR eligible government securities. And rest of the money, they will be depositing with other banks so that they can effectively manage the liquidity. What is the minimum paid up capital that they require? That is 100 crore. And is FDI allowed in the payment bank? The answer is yes, up to 74%. Okay, so these are the important facts that you need to know with respect to the payments bank. With this, let's move on to the next topic. And before we move, there's a PYQ based on whatever we have discussed. Please try and attempt this particular PYQ. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, recently, the opposition political party members have submitted a fresh notice in the Rajya Sabha for removal of Chief Election Commissioner. This particular topic you can associate with the polity section of your prelims syllabus. Now, what are the charges which the opposition political party members have levied against the CEC? So, first is that there is partisan enforcement of the Model Code of Conduct. The opposition political parties have raised concern when it comes to the Honorable Prime Minister giving an address to the nation on April 18th. It was violating the poll conduct, and this was brought to the notice of CEC, but he did not took any action in this respect. Second charge is denunciation of a recognized political party on the social media handle of the Election Commission of India. Because on the social media handle, it stated that this time we are going to ensure intimidation-free, inducement-free elections in the state of West Bengal. Third charge is administrative lapses. This is related to Kerala seal. So a letter was forwarded by the ECI to all the political parties in Kerala which was carrying the BJP seal. Then another charge is, when it comes to CEC, the opposition political parties have stated that the activities of CEC are unbecoming of a constitutional functionary. The fifth charge is related to mass disenfranchisement in the West Bengal, because 91 lakh voters, their name has been deleted from the special intensive revision, okay, that we are doing in the state of West Bengal. Then the sixth charge is willful non-action upon specific documented complaints of official partnership. The seventh charge is carrying out the defective SIR framework in a nationwide, replicating the defective SIR framework. The eighth is repeated acquisition of adverse judicial observation, and the last charge is illegally abusing the power to direct, transfer and posting of bureaucrats in Tamil Nadu. Earlier also such motions were introduced, but they were rejected by the presiding officers of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Now this is a fresh motion that has been introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Now let's try and understand that what are the grounds on which the Chief Election Commissioner can be removed. So to ensure the independence of this particular office, Constitution has provided a very strict procedure to be followed when it comes to its removal. Article 324, Clause 5 of the Indian Constitution provides that the removal of CEC would be done on the same grounds as we remove the Supreme Court judge. Okay, so that would be on two grounds: proved misbehavior and incapacity. And when it comes to the other election commissioners, they can be removed only when it is recommended by the CEC. Now, when it comes to the CEC and other election commissioners appointment condition of service terms of office Act 2023, it followed the same process which is mentioned in the Indian Constitution. So grounds of removal are only these two. And one more thing that you need to make note of is, when it comes to removal of judges and when it comes to removal of CEC, we don't use the word impeachment. This word is only associated with the president. Now, what is the procedure? So a motion needs to be introduced which needs to be signed by 100 members if it is introduced in the Lok Sabha, and it needs to be signed by 50 members if it is introduced in the Rajya Sabha. Then the motion would be submitted to the presiding officer, and it is up to the presiding officer. They can admit also or they can refuse to accept that motion also. If it is admitted, then a 3-member committee would be constituted which would be having Supreme Court judge, High Court Chief Justice and a distinguished jurist which would be investigating the charges. And if the charges are proved, then what would happen? Voting would be carried out in the two houses of the parliament, and this needs to be, the motion needs to be passed by a special majority, that is majority of the total membership of that house and majority of not less than 2/3 of the members present and voting. And ultimately, when the motion is passed by both the houses in the same session, then President issues an official order for the removal of CEC. Okay, so that is all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently, what we are witnessing is Meta is blocking or removing the content which is flagged by the government as an objectionable content. This is being done through Sahyog Portal, which provide a web link for the authorized police officers to send a notice to the Meta that you have to remove this objectionable content. Now, experts are pointing out that this is going to lead to an era of censorship. Why? Because recently IT Minister has reduced the timeline for removing the objectionable content. Earlier, the social media intermediaries have to remove the content within 36 hours. Now they have to do it within a maximum of of 3 hours. So we are giving less amount of time to the social media intermediaries that they can actually analyze this thing, that whether this content is actually objectionable or not. This particular topic you can again associate with the polity section of your prelims syllabus. Now, various sections of the IT Act which gives the power to the government authorities to give this notice to Meta or other social media intermediaries. First is section 69A, which empowers the central government to block the public access to an online content which the government thinks that it is going to jeopardize the national security, sovereignty or public order. Then we have section 79, which provides the safe harbor protection to the online intermediaries. What is the safe harbor protection? So this means a legal protection is given to the online intermediaries, provided once they get the notice from the government, they act as neutral platform. That means they remove that objectionable content. If they don't do this, then they would also be liable before a court of law. They have to prove themselves, okay, that whatever they did was legally right or not, okay. If I posted some content and that is objectionable, I would be, liable to defend myself before the court of law. But if the social media intermediaries, they got the notice from the government and then also they didn't remove the content, then they would also have to defend themselves before the court of law when it comes to their action. Now, what we need to know more is about the Sahyog Portal. So, what is the Sahyog Portal all about? So, this portal was launched by Union Home Ministry way back in October 2024, and it is operated through Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center. It is through this platform under section 79 of the IT Act that the police authorities are able to send takedown notices to social media intermediaries. What is the aim? To streamline takedown communication between the government agency and the social media intermediaries, and to preserve the safe harbor protection for the social media intermediaries. Okay, because if they act in a neutral manner, then they will be enjoying the safe harbor protection. What are the key features? We have a centralized channel which connects 65 online intermediaries. Then automated notices are sent. Legal backing is there. I told you it is done under section 79 of the IT Act. There, it is different from section 69A that we discussed right now, which gives the central government the power that they can block the access to an online content, okay, for the public. And it is a public good tool which ensures that the immediate action is taken. That's all that we need to know with respect to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, the last topic of today's analyst is dealing with the polar bears. Now, one tiny Arctic village which is situated in Alaska, it is trying to revive its polar bear tourism industry. And what is the name of that Arctic village? Kaktovik. This particular topic you can associate with the environment section of your prelims syllabus. Now, when it comes to polar bears, they are the largest carnivorous land mammal on the earth, and they are the only bear species to be considered marine mammals, as they spend most of their life on the sea ice of the Arctic Ocean. What are the physical characteristics? When it comes to the outer layer of the fur of polar bear, it is hollow and it reflects light, giving the fur a white color that helps the bear remain camouflage. And polar bear also have a thick layer of fat below the surface of the skin, which act as an insulation, okay, which enables the polar bear to trap the heat. Where are they found? You need to make note of this thing, that polar bears are not found in the Antarctic region. They are found in the Arctic Circle to the North Pole, and some of the population is also found in the Hudson Bay of Manitoba, Canada. Some are found in Alaska, Canada, Russia, Greenland and Norway. They majorly feed upon the seals. And what is their ecological significance? They are the apex predator and they act as a keystone species in the Arctic region. They help in keeping the population of seals in check. And what is the conservation status when it comes to polar bears? So it is vulnerable when you go by the IUCN Red List, and in the CITES they are placed in Appendix 2. That's all that we need to know in today's analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next, so don't forget to practice the quiz and check your knowledge. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a great day, all of you.